Hi, David. Donald Trump is in the White House for a second term. Canada has been on the receiving end of tariff threats. Our sovereignty has been threatened. What are the challenges when it comes to filtering fact from fiction?
Well, think of these various remarks from Donald Trump as like sparks in a forest. Not everyone is a flame, not everyone will ignite, but there are enough sparks, there's enough kindling, sooner or later you have a conflagration. It's not only Canada that has been on the receiving end of these threats. Other allies have as well. Greenland is an autonomous region within Denmark, a NATO ally and an EU member. Donald Trump has threatened aggression against Greenland. He's threatened Panama, which is a U.S. ally, member of the Organization of American States. He's threatened to annex the Panama Canal Zone. He's, of course, often talked about withholding aid from Ukraine, not a formal ally, but a U.S. partner. And many in his party, including his running mate, and now the vice president, have talked about using military force inside Mexico without the consent of the Mexican government against Mexican cartels. So within the Western Hemisphere, there's a settled plan of aggression, I think is the word you'd call it, at the same time as we've seen Donald Trump going far out of his way to appease Russia, China, countries you might think of as adversaries of the United States.
Indulge us here for a moment. You've been in the political sphere for more than a minute. When it comes to this new world of U.S. foreign policy, have you seen this style of politics anywhere before?
Certainly nowhere in the United States, nowhere in any democratic country. But if you followed, say, Argentina under Juan Perón, I think this would be very familiar. It is an authoritarian, reactionary politics of nationalism and aggression. And it's very dangerous for that reason. It's different from the Trump first term. Trump arrived in office the first time not knowing very much about how the U.S. government worked and not having a very clear idea of what he wanted to do with that power. This time he does have a much stronger idea. And a lot of his resentment and rage is directed against allies of the United States. Meanwhile, at his inauguration, one of the best seats in the House was given to the CEO of TikTok, which is an arm of Chinese foreign policy. Donald Trump talked a lot against China, but when push comes to shove, China is friend, Canada, Denmark, Panama, those are enemies.
Help us then understand. I mean, we still have some cleaning up in our own backyard here as we await a new Liberal Party leader. What should our strategy be? And you mentioned the word ally. Can we continue to count on the U.S. as a reliable ally going forward?
Well, the United States is, of course, bigger than any one president. It's bigger than any one administration. Both at any given moment, there's a lot more to the U.S. government than just the president. And of course, there's a long range of time. The United States Constitution is almost 250 years old. The U.S. Canada alliance, depending on how you count it, goes back at least to the 1930s, and of course, partners are in arms during the First World War. So these are long relationships. But one thing that I think needs to be stressed about Donald Trump is a lot of people, a lot of very smart people in Canada are trying to figure out what Trump's about. And because they're so smart, because they're so strategic, they are kind of projecting the same onto Donald Trump as if there is a big strategy here. When a lot of this is about a malignant personality, and a lot of this is about his personal economic interests, much more than anything that you'd normally call political strategy.
Help us read between the lines here when the U.S. president says he would like to annex Greenland or annex Canada. What's the play here?
Well, there's a psychological play. Look, since the Second World War, the relationship among the Western countries has been a series of partnerships. Some strategic, like NATO, some economic, like the World Trade Organization, some regional, like NAFTA, like the Organization of American States. But behind all of them is one big idea that among democratic countries, the right way to act is through cooperation. There are always gains. In every trade, both parties feel they benefit, or the trade would never happen in the first place. Both people sit down to do a deal, and both walk away feeling like winners, or the deal wouldn't happen. That's not how Donald Trump sees the world. He sees the world as a world divided between those who dominate and those who are dominated. In every deal, there's a winner and there's a sucker. He doesn't believe in the ideal of trade at all. He doesn't certainly doesn't believe in free trade. What he believes in is using power to get wealth. And now he's got a lot of power, and he's going to try to get a lot of wealth, above all for himself. But he's got this reactionary, backward idea of how the United States gets rich. It gets rich by never buying anything from anybody else.
David, as you take a look at all of these ingredients, and we know that Donald Trump's policy is America first. You have alluded to this with respect to the U.S. being this sphere of influence now. What does this world order look like? What does the global order look like going forward then? Is it unlike anything we've seen before?
It's very like things we've seen before. I mean, it is often true that strong countries try to dominate and prey upon their neighbors. What has been abnormal is that since 1945, we've built a world order of cooperation in which the United States, with all its great strength, works with other democracies to build a world that's better for everybody. Donald Trump doesn't accept that idea. So now we're into something that is, it seems new because it is so old, the politics of domination. Donald Trump is sometimes called an isolationist. That's not right. I mean, if he were an isolationist, he wouldn't be trying to annex Greenland from Denmark. What he is a predator. He's a predator in his sexual life. He's a predator in his business life. And now he's a predator in his political life.
And where does this leave Canada, David?
It leaves Canada needing to build a lot of friends. Canada has a well-established playbook for dealing with difficulties in the U.S. trade relationship, some timely concessions combined with finding allies at the state and local level. Call that Plan A, and it's a good plan, and absolutely it should be followed. But in this case, Canada needs to take seriously that this president is much more hostile to Canada than any of his predecessors have been in the memory of any living person. And a plan B is needed, a more dramatic plan B that says, you know what, you may not be able to mollify Trump with timely concessions. You may need to be able to build big coalitions, and not just inside the United States, but with other democratic partners, work with the EU, work with Mexico, to try to force upon Americans a greater understanding of what Trump is putting at risk for the United States. Let me give you just a couple of examples that I've been studying. Every package of pasta sold in the United States, except the very high-end ones, but every package of American-made pasta is made out of Canadian wheat. Canadian product, Canadian energy is what drives the refineries on the Gulf Coast, and it's Canadian electricity, of course, that powers the bright lights of New York. So nobody would be better off if this relationship were impaired. But it's important to drive home it's not only Canadians who will be worse off if the relationship is damaged.